page 14, it is, we're in party reform section. Okay, this is the old B in our document, but is currently the new C. Are there any objections to taking this off the table? Okay, seeing no objections, I will read this updated version, and this is in addition to this is in substitution to the current B, which is now C. Okay. Is that correct? Okay. Okay. The Commission recommends that the RDC develop a process to address violations of the Charter and bylaws. Any member of the DNC can bring a complaint alleging that the DNC officers or staff are not adhering to the provisions of the Charter and bylaws. Complaints that consist of disagreements that are managerial in nature shall not be heard, nor should challenges otherwise provided for in our Charter and bylaws, such as challenges to a state's delegate selection plan, Rule 21, I missed that word, what does it say? Rule 21 delegate selection rules, Regulation 3.4 of the regulations of the rules and bylaws, and challenges to the credentials to a DNC member, Article 2, Section 10B of the Charter and bylaws. We support the creation of an ombudsman council to impartially review and address any complaints or recommend improvements. The council should include the designee of the chair, the president of the ASCC, the co-chairs of the Rules and Bylaws Committee, the chairs of the regional caucuses, or their representatives, with others elected as needed to ensure diversity. Oh, recommended improvements. Got it, in the first sentence of the second paragraph. Thank you. Okay, so this is a replacement. Any discussion on this amendment? Okay, seeing no discussion, we're going to move to the vote. All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. You're making me over there. You only have one day of arm raising over there, Mayor. Okay, so we are unanimous with an abstention of Jim Roosevelt. Okay, thank you. That is passed. Okay, we are now moving to the amendment that was tabled around the budget and budget transparency and financial oversight council. So that is, yep, what page is it on there? Okay, so we're still on page 14, and it is the old 3C. So this is a replacement. Okay, so this is the replacement amendment for 3C, which is now E. On page 14, section this 3 of party reforms. Okay, so this is a replacement amendment. The Commission was informed of concerns about the level of transparency with the budgetary process at the DNC. As currently described in the bylaws, the Budget and Finance Committee is charged with reviewing the budget, assisting in developing priorities, reviewing major contracts, and evaluating the performance of consultants and senior staff. In addition to ex officio members, CEO and COO of the DNC, the composition of the Budget and Finance Committee should be by election of qualified members, allowing for adequate representation of the party's caucuses and councils and state chairs and regional caucuses. No person under contract with the DNC or any Democratic Party affiliate organization should serve on the Budget and Finance Committee. As called for in the bylaws, the Budget and Finance Committee should provide the Executive Committee for discussion in a closed session its annual reports, and this is in quotes, on the goals, purposes of expenditures, and results of expenditures and staff. The results of the report and the Executive Committee discussion should then be sent to the full DNC membership. We specifically recommend that each election cycle, e.g. presidential midterm, a published report on the focus of the DNC's finances, including all major expenditures and vendors, be made available. Okay, so this is a replacement amendment. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, and before Jeff Weaver moves to vote, we are going to move to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, looks like unanimous with an abstention of Jim Roosevelt. Okay, and then we are going to stick in this section, and we are going to move to new amendment on F. In the party reform section, section 3, operating in a manner that is open and transparent. F states, and I'm taking this off the table. Whatever I'm supposed to say about that, I was supposed to ask, without objection. Thank you. Getting there. The URC recommends that the DNC chair and leadership prepare an annual budget, which must be presented for review and approved by the DNC Budget and Finance Committee and presented to the full Democratic National Committee at each regularly scheduled meeting. The DNC officers shall be ex officio members of the Budget and Finance Committee. I'm just going to go and read G, and then we can vote separately on both of those. So G says, any and all contracts and expenditures exceeding $100,000 annually must receive prior approval from the DNC chair and officers and or their designees. As a part of any proposal, all vendors shall be required to disclose the composition of their leadership and the diversity of their organization. Go to discussion.
I would just like to thank Representative Fudge for working very hard on this with me. I don't know where we're going to vote on it, but it took a lot of work, and it's been something that the DNC members have been discussing for a very long time, and if this moves forward, I think it's going to be a very strong message to the DNC members and chairs that we're serious about the DNC's finances, so thank you.
Any additional discussion on F or G? Okay, seeing no discussion, we're going to go to the vote. We are going to vote first on F. All those in favor of the new F as amended, please raise your hands. Unanimous with one abstention of Jim Roosevelt. I know. Sorry, the small things that are funny, it shouldn't be funny to the rest of the world, and it's for us. Okay, we're going to move to the vote on G. All those in favor of G, please raise your hands. We are unanimous with an abstention, and it's unclear who that's from. Just kidding. For the record, it's Jim Roosevelt. Okay, great. Those both passed. We are now going to go to J, which is in the same section 3, and is on the former, it is the former 3G on page 15. If there is no objection, I'm going to move this off the table. This is joint JFA. So we tabled this yesterday as we were working on the other new amendments that are coming in, but we have not voted on it. So J reads, any and all joint fundraising agreements or memorandum of understanding shall be transparent and available to all official campaigns and used for the general election. To ensure the party has the necessary resources to conduct a vigorous general election effort, the DNC is encouraged to take steps to ensure all Democratic candidates participate in DNC fundraising events and solicit their own supporters to assist in general election efforts. The DNC, state parties, and the respective presidential campaigns will work together to determine the best ways to use resources raised under these agreements. The DNC will also take steps to ensure that state parties fully understand the financial terms of any agreements they enter into. Is there any discussion on J? Seeing no discussion, we're going to move to the vote. All those in favor of J, please raise your hands. We are unanimous with an abstention of Jim Roosevelt. Appropriately so, Mr. Roosevelt. I'm not joking about it. I'm just joking about it. Okay. Okay. Without objection, I'm going to move the amendment dealing with services be taken off the table. This is 6A on page 17. So still in party reform, page 17, in the connecting our values and our actions section. This is a replacement for the A that is in the current draft. Okay, so this is a full replacement amendment. So A reads, the commission recommends that the DNC develop a service-oriented program for the national and state parties that connects our values and our actions. This could also include trainings and other events that demonstrate a commitment to serving our communities. We therefore propose that, working with the state chairs, the DNC form a committee to assess ways to implement direct voter contact programs in targeted areas, and then assess after a 2-year period the impact this program has had on party growth and electoral performance. Based on this assessment, we can then decide whether and how to expand and fund this effort to more areas. Any discussion on this replacement amendment? Seeing no discussion, we're going to move to the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, we are unanimous in support with 1 abstention. Jim Zogby.
This was one of mine, as were the Finance Council modification and also the Ombudsman. And after yesterday, when we had to table all 3, I felt today a sense of relief that we were able to come to agreement on the language, and I appreciate again Congresswoman Fudge and Yvette and Elaine and you, Madam Chair, for having helped come up with language that we were able to work with, and so I really appreciate that. I think that far from being intrusive, these are committees that actually become empowering of DNC members and leadership to be able to make real decisions to make this a governing body, and I appreciate the fact that my colleagues supported this, and actually we were able to come to language that can make a real difference, I hope, in the future of this organization.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Jim. And thank you for all the work. I think these really highlight places where we all came together and will have real impact on the party moving forward. So we are going to move to the final section tabled from yesterday, which will take us to page 13 of your draft, which is section 2, supporting and growing state parties and increasing grassroots participation. We are making an addition, an amendment that will add to what you're seeing as B, formerly B in your section, is now currently C. So the new C would read as follows. And I was supposed to take that off the table, but anyway, seeing no objection, we're taking this off the table. The Commission recommends that the increased investment in state parties be maintained and possibly expanded over the course of the cycle. The Commission recommends that the DNC continue to maintain the 50-state strategy with recommendations for the program and financial goals by the leaders and members of the ASDC. Is there any discussion on this addition? Okay, seeing no discussion, we're going to move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise their hands. Oh, give it to us here. We have unanimous, no abstention. Okay. That is the last tabled amendment from yesterday. And so we have completed our consideration of the recommendations of the Unity Reform Commission, and we should all clap. Woo!
No.
Okay, we obviously still have some business to do, and so I want to thank everyone for all of their work. We are going to move right now to talk about the RBC process and the next steps of the Unity Reform Commission process, and then make sure that we have questions for commission members to take. The process that we go through from here is that both myself and the vice chair and the staff will go through the report as amended from today and yesterday, make any appropriate grammatical changes needed and consistent with the rest of the report. We will add in the sections that will include the process that we've gone through and how we came to here, which we will work on over the course of the next week, and we'll transmit to the commission members, and then we will transmit it to the RBC by January 1, 2019. And then that finishes the work of the report that we are required as a commission. From there, we are expected to be in loose formation for a period of 6 months while the RBC takes up the recommendations of our report. And that will mean that, and Jim Roosevelt, as the chair of the RBC, will go through the process they'll take in their deliberations and how that works. But we will stay as a commission invested in seeing this moving forward, invested in paying attention to when it's being discussed, and we as chairs, and we'll ask commission members as well as needed to be able to speak on behalf of some of the report and be able to elaborate more context as needed. And so while we will not be formally meeting, thank goodness, we will expect, and everyone should expect, to be called on in order to ensure that the work that we have done over the past year is the work that is implemented through the DNC moving forward. So with that, I want to turn the floor over to Jim Roosevelt, who is and has been one of the co-chairs of the DNC Rules and Bylaws Committee, to go over the process with everyone, and then we'll open it up to commission members for questions. Jim?
Thank you, Jen, and I want to thank you and Larry for your very strong and sustained leadership of this committee. I want to thank all the commission members. It has been an honor for me to serve on this commission, and I feel that working together, we've made some excellent recommendations. As you noticed, I've abstained from many of them because we will be having a full discussion in the Rules and Bylaws Committee, and I do not want to have prejudged the outcome of that discussion. But I feel that we have had the opportunity, and we've taken that opportunity to learn from each other here, and we've moved a long way from where we began in this discussion. So these recommendations will be transmitted to the Rules and Bylaws Committee and eventually to the full Democratic National Committee. On behalf of myself and my co-chair, Lorraine Miller, I'd like to assure you that we take this work very seriously. We plan to act on this swiftly to begin the process of incorporating these edits where applicable in the delegate selection rules, in the call for convention, in the regulations, in the charter, and in the bylaws. These are the documents that govern the process that these recommendations impact. In terms of the specific process, I've asked staff to schedule a meeting early next year to begin this work. I can tell you that we're looking at dates in late January or early February, and we will make sure commission members are notified when the meeting is set. There will be a public announcement as well, so that as with all Rules and Bylaws Committee meetings and all Democratic Party meetings, the public can attend either in person or electronically. We will meet frequently at the Rules and Bylaws Committee, and the process will be very similar to the process that we've gone through yesterday and today. I'm not aiming for another 12-hour meeting, but it will be a similar process. All of our meetings are open. I encourage all of you to attend. My plan is to have Jen and Larry brief the Rules and Bylaws Committee at that first meeting and inform the RBC of our process and deliberations so that we start the discussion hearing from the leadership of this body. I'll also be calling on each of you here from the commission to engage with the RBC as they process the recommendations, so that if you were involved in drafting, redrafting, proposing, and so on, we will be asking you to participate in this process. And that we we do often have presentations by representatives from state parties and the experts and so on. This will be even a little more so because I think there'll be more back and forth and discussion as to how we got to what we did and why we didn't get to some places. The Rules and Bylaws Committee will not just read the report, but we will rely on each of you as commission members to share your perspectives as to how we formulated these recommendations. After the Rules and Bylaws Committee's consideration, the report will be forwarded to the full DNC for final approval, which will be no later than the summer meeting in 2018. It is possible that some elements may go to the full DNC at the March meeting. That depends on how as we sort these out among the various documents, what would be the most coherent way to present them, and also what would be the most persuasive way to present them. If there is ultimately a recommendation from the Rules and Bylaws Committee that differs from the recommendation of this commission, the RBC recommendation will be referred back to this commission for agreement, endorsement, comment, disagreement, wherever it comes out. And if there is disagreement, as I understand the mandate, which sets up a 6-month period for the report to be processed by the RBC and reported to the full DNC, both the recommendations of the RBC and the recommendations of this commission, as well as the original mandate, will be presented to the full DNC. So that's the outline of the process. Madam Chair, I'd be happy to take any questions that you'd like to direct to me.
Thank you, Jim. So let's open it up to the commission members for questions. We're going to start with Jim Zogby.
Thank you, Jim Roosevelt. And again, thanks to all of our colleagues. We made much more progress, I think all of us would agree, than some of us may have assumed early on. But I do want to bring up the issue that I raised before about the potential for a conflict of interest. On so many issues we found consensus. And clearly on issues we find consensus, we would expect the Rules and Bylaws Committee to adopt as we recommend. On issues where there was a division in the House, I think it's important to ask that those members of this body who are sitting on the Rules and Bylaws Committee to simply agree to recuse themselves from consideration of those the Rules and Bylaws Committee with it. And I think that the chair here correctly abstained on issues that he knew he would be considering. I think the same goes for when these issues come before the Rules and Bylaws Committee. I'm asking not for a mandate, but I'm asking that members here simply consider that that would be the more appropriate measure to take. And so I appreciate that, and I put it forward for consideration.
So as Dr. Zogby has pointed out, I did abstain in issues that I thought would be subject to active discussion in the Rules and Bylaws Committee, and that's because I am co-chairing that meeting. I'm going to respectfully disagree with respect to whether Rules and Bylaws Committee members, other than the chair, co-chair, who are on this committee, need to recuse themselves. I think that they have, yes, as you say, they're getting 2 bites at the apple, but they have 2 roles in this process. And so I think you've presented for their consideration what you think is the appropriate thing for them to do. I respectfully disagree that they are compelled to do that.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Good night.
Okay. I saw Yvette first, and then Jeff and Lucy.
I am on Rules and Bylaws, and I do wear 2 hats. When you ask me to recuse myself, the assumption is that I'm going to do something that would be questionable. That's the way I'm taking it. That may not have been your intention, because you and I have worked extremely well together, but that is the perception that could be out there, that somehow our integrity would be questioned and we would not be able to be objective. My vote on this commission was to move this out of this body to the next step. That's it. And as Jim indicated, there may be changes, there may be things that come in that would alter. I have not made a final decision because we don't have all of the pieces in place yet. So to penalize us who have institutional knowledge as to how this whole process worked seems a bit unfair. And I would just respectfully like to ask that we at least be given a chance to see what the final is going to be before we are asked to silence our voices, before we're asked to have our voices suppressed, which always bothers me when I feel like that's happening. I don't think anyone on this commission, even though we walked in the door with the severest of disagreements, I don't think anyone on this commission has operated in bad faith, not one person. I think everybody on this commission has been passionate about what they believe in, and they've advocated for those passions. And I also think that there was a fair vote up and down the board of people advocating for those positions. There's not one person in this room that I would feel uncomfortable with in terms of the relationships that we have developed over these last few months. So I would just respectfully ask that you afford us that same consideration and trust that we will try to operate in good faith and do the very best that we can. But let us see what the final product is going to be before you judge what our outcome is going to be. That's the only thing I would say.
We can go. Okay, fine. All right. We have Jeff Weaver next, and then Lucy, Emmy, and then Jim Zogby.
Yeah, and I hate to disagree with my good friend Jim Zogby, but you know, I have had an opportunity to work with a lot of people on this commission who I didn't know before. Many of you whom I opposed before, and I'm sure at some point will oppose again. But I do want to say that, and with respect to what Yvette is, that everybody on this commission worked in good faith, and we have had some arguments, and in some cases, folks should know, very bitter arguments. And you know, people came here representing both the Clinton campaign, the Sanders campaign, and a few of you are even here to represent the institutional party, 3 people supported by the party. What's that?
O'Malley campaign. Yeah, that's right. You don't forget him.
But we all came here with a mandate from the convention, which was unanimously adopted by every pledged delegate, by every superdelegate, to make reforms to the party. And everybody around this table has worked, and in some cases bent their positions to try to come to a document that we could reach consensus on. And I think that this document, if passed in its present form, if I was writing it myself, it would be different. But in its present form represents a huge step forward in reform of the nominating process and of the Democratic Party. And so, you know, the folks who were on this commission, who were also on RBC, whether they were appointed by the DNC or by the Clinton campaign, have all voted in support of the provisions in this document. If they were to just take this document and repass it, I would be elated and declare it a great victory for reformers and institutional players alike in the party. So I don't see any reason why folks should have to recuse themselves, having supported. If they had all voted against this document, I might feel differently. But they have all supported they've all voted in support of every one of the reforms in this document, including the reform of the unpledged delegate system, and including reforming the primaries, the caucuses, and some of the party reform items. I mean, understanding that, Jim, you and I would write a different document together than what is here, right? So they have all supported. I'm confident that they will continue to support what's in this document. Going forward, I've talked to many of them privately who have assured me that, having voted for it on this commission, they will continue to vote for it and support it on the RBC. So, you know, I will take them at their word, and I look forward to consulting, you know, with the RBC during its deliberations to make sure that the interests of the people who supported Senator Sanders last time and who want reform in this party are heard.
Thanks, Jeff. Lucy is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one, just a question for clarification, because I'm not familiar of the makeup of the URC in terms of, the rules and bylaws, how many members there are. So I'm just curious how many there are. Can I just have, and then I have a follow-up right after that.
Go ahead, Jim.
35.
Okay, 35. So, 3 people recuse themselves, it wouldn't present necessarily a voting issue. So I just put that out there. 2, I did think of something interesting because of the comments that you made in terms of any changes that are made to this document, that they would actually come back to this committee for comment and or consideration. And so I do think it's interesting that if you have folks who are going back and forth from these various, and probably not back and forth, but sustained on those committees, that you're going to have folks who are voting here, voting there, and then voting here again, should anything change. So I just put that out there. I agree with Jeff. I think that ultimately for me, I think it's important, one, that, the reason why I asked about the membership makeup of the rules and bylaws is just for information purposes, to be fully transparent so that people understand the context. But I do agree with Jeff that if anyone does feel at some point that the perception, even if it's not about, because as we all know in politics, it's not oftentimes about what you're allowed to do, it's what that perception is about whether or not it's the right thing to do. And so if any member at some point feels that they are conflicted, as you did, Jim, and feel that the appropriate thing is to recuse themselves, I want to move forward with full faith and confidence that those members will. And I believe that they will.
Thank you, Lucy. Emmy? Hi, as a Rules and Bylaws member, I want to thank Jeff and Lucy for their comments. I think certainly this has been a great process for so many of us who have not only better understood each other's passions, but in many cases adopted those passions as our own. And so I think for the vast majority of this process, I couldn't think of an instance when this wasn't the case, when somebody acted not in good faith. And so I would just ask for that feeling to be reciprocated of us. And I know that on the Rules and Bylaws Committee, on the record, I am committing to wearing both hats of, one, making sure that all of our views on the Unity Reform Commission are represented, but ultimately advocating for the final passage that we all agreed on of that document. And I think for all of us, our North Star continues to make sure that we're doing everything we can to strengthen the Democratic Party. As an aside, I have a feeling there will be plenty of accountability measures along the way to hold our feet to the fire and to say, hey, you said you're going to be a great advocate for us. Can you make sure that this is on the record, or making sure that everyone knows that these meetings are occurring and that all voices are represented, not just those of us in this room, but those of us that couldn't be with us today, state parties, DNC members, current, future, and beyond. Thank you, Emmy. Jim Zogby, and then Nomi.
Number one, Yvette, it's not a question of your integrity. I respect it, and I honor the work we've done together, but also respect the fact that you will be honorable in the way you conduct yourself on the Rules and Bylaws Committee. Never a question of that. And the same, Emmy. I do agree with what Jeff has said, and I also agree with what Lucy has said, in that we passed the document, for the most part, unanimously. And I would hope that same sense of unanimity, that you now go to that body representing all of us, not just representing yourself. And so that's all I'm asking for. And so basically what you just said is that if there were a time when it becomes a conflict, it was Lucy who said that, then I hope you will then decide to recuse. Because you're not just representing a point of view, but you're representing the work that we've done collectively together. So I, like Jeff, hope that what comes out of the Rules and Bylaws Committee is what goes into the Rules and Bylaws Committee, and that is a collective endorsement of a unanimous position, for the most part, on most of the issues that we've struggled hard with. I just wanted to put that on the record, not to question integrity, but to question the optics of what it would appear like if the document ends up getting modified in ways that become rather unrecognizable from the things we've agreed to. I know it'll come back to us, but we shouldn't have to go through that process. I'm hoping that you will fight for the document we've all agreed to, and I believe you will. I believe you will, and I thank you for that.
Thanks, Jim. Nomi?
Jim and I have talked about this a lot over the past month and a half since the recommendations were made by Secretary Perez for the Rules and Bylaws. I think I definitely agree with the intent, what the principle of what Jim has put forward, Dr. Zogby has put forward, and I'm out of good faith. I actually believe that we'll have, having gotten to know many of you on this commission, that we will have fair representation on the commission defending what we have just worked the last year towards. With that being said, I'm going to add one little point just to kind of reinstate. In the charter, Section 7, Article 1, at the end of Section 7, Article 1, there's a sentence that basically it's a security for us that the person in this office shall not use their office to gain special privileges and benefits, that's not what I'm saying, and shall refrain from acting in their official capacities when their independence of judgment would be adversely affected by personal interest or duties. So I think that protects us. This is the closest thing that we have right now to a conflict of interest, meaning we've discussed financial conflicts of interest, but we haven't discussed commission conflicts of interest. It's in the charter of bylaws. So I'm only saying this in that I think this ensures that whoever is on the Rules and Bylaws Committee and also on this commission is going to be acting out of good faith, and it will not be out of any other conflicts, meaning an agenda. I don't know what that agenda could be, but whatever concerns that might be put forward. And I understand in principle why Dr. Zogby put this forward, and I agree in principle that we should be uniform across the board, and that this shouldn't happen in the future. Unfortunately, it's happened, and so I just ask that of the people that have gotten to know that are on the Rules and Bylaws Committee, you just keep this in mind, that we should be acting out of good faith, and I believe that we will.
Jane. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to offer a suggestion, which I think perhaps could just be a suggestion in conversation with Chair Perez, in that the ASD president, as we know, was not reappointed to the Rules, or was not appointed to the Rules Committee. And there's a fix in process to make sure that President Ken Martin is on, as well as Secretary Ray. I'm not sure that that is happening in time for the January or February meeting of the Rules Committee. And so my suggestion is that we make that happen. There are a lot of things in the document that note that the ASD president, will be on various committees, and he does serve as the voice of state party chairs. And so I think that his voice on the Rules and Bylaws Committee, as this is being debated, is very critical. So I'd ask that Chair Perez perhaps moves that appointment process up. And in addition, in order to then gender balance, because that would be 2 males and so 2 females should be added, I would like to suggest that 2 females from this Unity Reform Commission then get added along with Ken Martin and Secretary Ray in order to really show that we are concretely building that bridge of unity. Thank you.
Jim?
The appointment of additional members to the Rules and Bylaws Committee, which is actually, as we have discussed at length, a recommendation from the chair that is then voted by either the executive committee or the full DNC, may not be able to happen in sequence before the next Rules and Bylaws Committee meeting. So I have spoken to both of those individuals about inviting them to participate in those meetings, even though they have not been officially appointed. That doesn't solve a gender balance problem. That's for when we get to the official action.
Great, thank you. I am going to now move to final remarks for commission members. I'm going to ask, we obviously went a little bit longer than we were hoping today, with good reason, and so we should feel good about that, but I'd like everyone to give like 2 minutes, so let's not go on till the end of time, and we will have to call you if you're talking too long. But we want to hear your remarks for the record, because of all the work, we want to respect your final remarks. So we're going to start with Jan. We are going to move around, and we will get going right now. Thanks, Jan.
Hi. Yes, I guess it has been 7 months ago when we met in this very hotel. I introduced myself as being from Ames, Iowa, the home of the Iowa Caucus. And I think it's safe to say that I have advocated on behalf of caucuses, perhaps a little too much, but I think they are worthy of the effort. They're a little unusual, they're certainly quirky, much like my son, but they are critical to this party and in building its base. And I hope that you will continue to maintain the presence of caucuses in the party structure. The most important feature, though, of caucuses is the communication angle. They force people to speak with one another. And that was the beauty of this commission. Everyone had an opportunity to communicate, to build consensus, and hopefully in the end result, we will be building our party. It hasn't always been pretty. We haven't always gotten everything we wanted out of the process, but we were able to be heard. And I want to thank all of you for allowing me the privilege of serving with you. It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you sometime real soon.
My thanks to all of you. Unlike most of you, I had a fight to get in this party. There was a time when Arab Americans could not get in the front door, and it was Ron Brown who brought us in, and I was appreciative of that. I have to say that I've grown to be deeply attached to the party, and both understand after 26 years of being on the DNC and 16 on the executive committee, I understand its flaws, but I also understand its meaning. I grew up as a Democrat. I was 7 years old, walking precincts with my mom. It was always important to me. And the privilege of being able to serve on the body has meant a great deal. To break down the barrier that kept us out and to be able to be the Arab American who represented my community was important to me. When Senator Sanders asked me to participate through Larry Cohen on this body, I was thrilled. A chance to address some of the really important issues that we have to address to make our party stronger. I believe that unity and reform go together. We need to reform to be unified. We had real differences last year, and not just differences in issues, but differences in how we operate as a party, how we operate in the politics of America. And so I believe that the challenge that we faced was serious, but I also believe that what we accomplished in reforming the electoral process and providing real opportunities that we had hoped for, reducing the impact of superdelegates, making caucuses stronger, opening up primaries, but then also in party reform, creating for the first time bodies that will oversee how we do our work, fulfilling the bylaws on budget transparency, and creating an ombudsman so that if we have issues like the ones we had last year, there's a place to go. This is important, and I believe we've done good work, and I appreciate your support for it, and I want to thank you, Senator Sanders, for giving me the opportunity, Ron Brown for having brought me into this body a heck of a long time ago, and all of you for making this work, despite some of our differences in the beginning, making it actually an enjoyable and collegial exercise. I learned a lot, and I hope we accomplished a lot. Thank you.
And I have made my remarks already. So.
I'd just like to thank the commission members. It's been really great getting to know you. Like most have said, we've had some battles, but overall, I think the work that we came up with is important. And I'm excited to see what the changes that this can bring to the Democratic Party. I think for me, it was very important to make sure that we were inclusive, that we were focusing on diversity. That's something that I try to champion on this commission, and I hope that I did. And I'm glad that we were able to, I think, come up with a product that will ultimately get voted on and provide a lot of great change that we need. So thank you again, and hope to see you guys around.
Thank you, and ditto to what all of my fellow commissioners have said up until this point. It was a robust debate. I want the public to know there were moments that you didn't see, which I wish you could have seen. Us really go at it on the issues that we believe in. I'm certainly glad to C-SPAN is here. Wish they could have been here from the beginning, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions still out there among the public about what was really going on with this commission. But I want folks to know that people did really fight for the issues that they believe in. This is consensus, and in consensus, you don't get everything that you want. But we must continue. I am more concerned about what happens after this. So my message is more to the public, that I want the folks that really care about building and rebuilding this Democratic Party to be a place where all are included, no matter their backgrounds, really touched by what Dr. Zogby had to say, because I'm sure that many people still feel like they're being left out and not counted in the Democratic Party, and that we only accept the voices of people who agree with us, instead of understanding the beauty of dissent. That, as James Baldwin said when he critiqued the United States of America on behalf of African Americans, he said, "I love this country more than any other, and because of my love for this country, I reserve the right to critique it." And I'm paraphrasing him. And that goes for the Democratic Party as well, and that it is certainly unfortunate in this environment that if you don't get along, go along to get along, people want to vilify you, when in fact the very people throughout history who have gone against the status quo have made this country a better country and a better place. And I would argue that that same sentiment holds for this party as well. I am, though, proud of this exercise, even though my blood pressure went up many times. Even today, Lucy Flores, my dear sister, had to talk me off all kinds of ledges, because it is absolutely important that we do not say that we have unity without reform. It takes reform to have unity. I want the people who came here today to understand, and so glad that you all got up to express yourself, that you are respected, even though many times the process makes people who are not on the inside feel as though they are not respected, but we do respect you. And so folks are gonna have to get engaged. There's a long time between now and March, and I do want to see the general public, people who care about strengthening this party, to be engaged. This change will not happen without you, because having these words are one thing, execution is another. We have one of the most progressive platforms, but execution is important. What the Unity Reform Commission has done is really now about execution. So titles are good, but purpose is better. And I'm hoping that we will continue to push the purpose of making sure that the Democratic Party is inclusive of all. I wanted to see superdelegates eliminated all the way. I got to go on the record to say that, because I do not believe that there should be a certain set of people whose authority and ideas are more important than others. But we did significantly reduce them, and we have more work to do in the Democratic Party to win over the folks. I think it was Nomi who expressed a few days ago about how important it is for this Democratic Party to stand up and to be strong, because we are the ones that the people need, not just in our words, but also in our deeds. And this Unity Reform Commission, I want you to know all of us worked incredibly hard, and that people can be proud of what we have accomplished thus far, but we have so many miles to go.
I'd like to echo the thoughts of my fellow commissioners and thank you for the cooperation and the good faith that you've shown here. I didn't get everything I wanted. I would have liked to see no reduction in superdelegates, okay? Just to point that out, okay? So I didn't get everything I wanted, but I will go forward and support the work of this commission in the Rules Committee and forward. But I just want to make a point. I think we have a great progressive platform. We can't get anything done on that great progressive platform unless we take back the House in 2018. And I think everybody here has to understand that we've worked in a spirit of unity because we are facing a really big deal. We are facing the most dangerous American president we have ever had. And in order to check that president, we need a Democratic House of Representatives, if not also a Democratic Senate.
I want to thank everyone on the commission for allowing me to serve with you. It's been a great honor. I honestly believe that the Democratic Party remains the most inclusive party in the world. There's, of course, a lot of people who are still feeling like they're left behind by the party, and there's a lot of work that we still have to do. But I do believe that the report that we're going to recommend to the RBC, begins to make that, it makes the party more inclusive. And I think we've done a really good job of making sure that we reform these buckets and sticking within the confines of the mandate. So thank you for serving with me.
Mine's a little bit more personal. Earlier this year, both of my grandparents passed away within 4 months of each other. They were 92 years old. They both escaped a fascist communist dictatorship, all those things combined, in Albania, the Depression, to get on the last boat into Ellis Island. And my grandfather, who was 92, he became an American citizen right away. He studied very hard to become an American citizen. And then he immediately joined his local Democratic Party club. And he became a Democratic Party activist, as well as my grandmother. My grandfather campaigned for Dukakis, as a Greek, of course. He gave money to the party. He organized. He got all of his Greeks in his little Greek clubs to come out and support Democrats. He raised my mother to be a Democrat. He raised me to be a Democrat. And the last person he was able to vote for was Bernie Sanders. Or I should say Hillary Clinton, too. Both, in unity, Hillary and Bernie Sanders. And my grandfather told me, he said, Bernie Sanders reminded me of FDR, who he couldn't vote for, and he wanted to vote for. Now, if we think back to before FDR, the Democratic Party was at its weakest point. It is at its weakest point since 1929. We know that going in here. And right before my grandfather died, he was fully cognizant, and we had many conversations about Donald Trump and Republicans controlling the state legislatures. And he knew that I was appointed to this commission, and he reinstilled how important it was that we, on this commission, understand that we are what stands in between fascism right now. And he told me many stories, which I was luckily able to film on his deathbed, about what it meant. And so I think today what we did here, and I'm not the only one who has stories like this. Americans everywhere have stories like this. We see who's standing up every single day to Donald Trump and his immigrant ban, DACA. We could go through a list of things that he's doing, and the Republicans as well. So what I think we did here today was historic, incredibly profound. We've listened to complaints and issues raised from the public, from Democratic Party members, state chairs, and we spent the last 9 months really hashing out where the Democratic Party lost its way. We are what stands in the way of fascism, and so if all of these things are executed, and I really hope they are, I want to commend everybody here, including the chairs, for leading this effort. I know I am hoping that the report that we publish will hopefully reinstill faith in those that we've lost along the way so that we can strengthen this party, we can bring members back into this party, that it's easier for them to register to vote, become members of the party, and vote Democratic, and give to the Democratic Party, so that we become the institution that we deserve to be, knowing exactly where this country stands on issues. We should be the institution that is there to protect them. So thank you to everybody, and thank you to the public. Seriously, you came out, you spent Friday and Saturday here, you've been watching on camera. These things can be long and tedious, and we're very, very appreciative of you being here, as well as thank you to all of my commissioners, fellow commissioners.
I want to come back and thank first Jen and Larry for your strong leadership of this committee, this commission, which I just know firsthand, it's not an easy thing to do, and you kept us focused on what we were all here to do and what we were trying to achieve, and kept, trying to help us get to that higher ground. So I want to thank you both very much for that. I am proud to have served with all of you, my fellow commissioners, and to also have gotten to know some of you better than when I started here. And I'm particularly appreciative for the last 48 hours and how we really pushed ourselves and challenged ourselves to listen carefully to each other and understand where people were coming from, and to just put the rigor to our conversations that allowed us to achieve even more consensus. And I think that was really important. And I think that at the end of the day, that has allowed us to, and at least for me, be glad that after all the months we spent together, the debating, the discussing, and the intensity of the last 48 hours, to come out of this process with so many concrete recommendations that really will strengthen the Democratic Party. So I appreciate the process and all of you fellow commissioners, and I'm glad that we came up with something meaningful that I think will make a difference.
Thank you. We're going to now go to the other side of the table. I was going to say the aisle, but that would not be what I mean. Lucy, kick us off.
Maybe not. I'll keep my remarks short. Because Emmy's timing me, so fine, whatever. It is said that the sign of a good compromise is when no one is 100% happy, and I think that based on everyone's remarks, that is certainly true. I am 100% happy that in this case, I am not normally known as the voice of reason, but I have been singled out as the voice of reason, so that is cause for celebration for me. And I actually do want to reiterate two things. One, of course, working with everyone has been truly incredible. Again, we're not 100% happy, but we're certainly 100% happy with where we have arrived as a group. And I also want to reiterate that the chairs, both Jen and Larry, I did not know initially what we were walking into, and certainly we all had a reason to be skeptical. But I think that one of the things we all can agree on is that your leadership has been critical and has been fair. I guess I'll be honest and say, I'm kind of surprised because, sometimes you expect the worst, and, we had a battle. But I've been very, very pleasantly surprised, and I'm very, very grateful for both your leadership and for the work of everyone around this table. So thank you. And that was 1:25, so I'm 30 seconds.
I want to go on the record as stating I too am surprised that Lucy has been the voice of reason. But it's been really incredible serving with each and every single person here. I'm really incredibly honored and grateful that Secretary Clinton appointed me and so many of us in good faith to lead this commission, to continue the fight and all she's done for the Democratic Party. I have learned a lot from everyone about the passions that you carried, adopted most of them, and am really committed to taking that fight on to the Rules and Bylaws Committee. But above all, I think this year has been a really difficult year for so many of us, especially our communities. And one of the upsides for me working on Chairman Perez's campaign, being a part of this commission, going into being a DNC member, is really getting to know so many of the Democratic organizers and activists that are truly doing this work on the ground. And so I hope that in addition to this report that we've produced, that I think we can all feel really proud about, the progress that we've made, I hope that we can also all leave here with a real commitment to ensuring that in 2018, we're doing everything we can to elect every candidate with a D by their name. That is truly how we begin to help our communities and our people and our voters and ensure that we are building a strong Democratic Party. And I look forward to doing that work alongside each and every one of you. With 45 seconds to spare.
Let me begin by saying, one, I'm pleased to be on the commission and having been appointed by Secretary Clinton. Two, as I shared with Jane, my positions over time have changed since the first time I ran for office as a 29-year-old running for the legislature. I love caucuses. We got 88% the first time I ran for our caucus. I ran unopposed as a freshman. And But the longer I've stayed in politics, I've always questioned the degree to how strong our party is going to be. And given the fact we don't have 21 shrinking violets sitting around this table, I feel very good about the future of the Democratic Party, because we have all come together from different backgrounds, different interests, different passions, and we've come together to put a document together that goes before the entire DNC. And I think that my hope for the future is that we will all affirm the document that we worked on, share with the public that no one received everything they wanted, but there was compromise in it, and the party as an institution is better off because of our service than it would be if the Unity Commission had not been appointed. And I think we need to really take that into account. And I would also want to, in closing, focus in, and I won't do my normal closing because I'm Baptist and that normally takes 3 times. I want to concur with Elaine that my concerns are really at this point for the future of our country. What we can do for 2018 and what we can do for 2020 with that individual that sits in the White House that's going to Mississippi today. And so I think that as we move forward, if we can work together for the benefit of the party as we've come together and worked here on this Unity Commission, that the party will be even stronger. Also want to thank Jen and Larry for their leadership. They've cut it right down the middle and adjusted on some and pushed on others, which is what co-chairs are supposed to do. And I think it's been a pleasure serving with each one of you and getting to know each one of you a little better.
Good afternoon. I too want to appreciate and applaud both Jan and Larry for a role they played. Haven't had to process myself many kinds of organization in an area, Berkeley, California, where everybody thinks they can render a full-blown dissertation at a public hearing. I was extremely pleased when Larry called me and said that Senator Bernie had asked would I serve on this. I wasn't expecting anything like that, although I campaigned for him. Danny Glover and I campaigned in the South for him and other places. I consider Bernie one of the greatest people I've ever known in my life. He and I stood as mayors at the same time. He, Dennis Kucinich, and I used to be called on to talk at many of the Eastern universities. And I remember when he threw his hat in to run for governor of Vermont, he invited me out to campaign with him. And representatives of UPI and AP were in his office the first morning that we were going out to campaign. And the question was, Bernie, why would you, a Jew from Brooklyn, who's a socialist, invite Gus Newport, a former black nationalist and a socialist from Berkeley, to campaign in a 97% white state? And Bernie said, because we're going to talk about the issues. And they had no more questions to ask. And that's what it's about. If we could get past our own egos and look at the issues and the state of our people, because even though we talk about the great things the Democratic Party has done, we are 37th in the world in education. Black America is at its lowest economic edge since the Jim Crow era. I was fortunate enough when I got my inauguration to have James Baldwin sitting in the front row, who was a senior fellow we had spent many times together. I debated Saul Alinsky. I assisted Malcolm X as he left the Muslims to create the Organization of Afro-American Unity as he became involved in the Civil Rights Movement. I was the vice president for the World Peace Council. I still don't feel like we've accomplished what we should. My mother was a practicing Democrat. My father was an Abe Lincoln Republican. My great-grandmother was a slave. My grandmother started taking me to see Paul Robeson and Marian Anderson at the age of 5 years old. So the Democrat Party still has a long way to go. I appreciate what we accomplished, but don't go out here bragging too soon when you look at the status of the American people, et cetera, whatever else. And this didn't just happen on Trump's hand. You know, Trump has only been there for a year. So I say, I feel very pleased I've been pressed forever to write a book, and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to talk about that. Because the other thing, history is not recorded in the United States of America. It's propaganda. And that's why young people are asking us to tell them what happened in the Jim Crow era, other kinds of things. So don't go out of here feeling too goddamn proud, because I love that I've been a part of this, and I will continue to stay involved with the DNC or some way, because I think this may be the avenue to go. But a lot of my constituents say, Gus, if you don't come back with the answers we want, no matter how difficult it is, we're going to start a third party. You got to think of the reality. The millennials just said they'd had enough. Many of them know they won't be able to buy a house in their lifetime. They got to pay these student loans, et cetera, and other things. And if we don't come together and look at it, too many of us who get into body politics eventually just focus on ourselves. You know, we got retirement for life, we got health care for life, but what about the people? And so I say, again, I'm really pleased to have been a part of this, but I'm going out of here with my head held high, but damn sure not going out with the accomplishments that I'd hoped. And I love all you all, but don't think the job is done. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you, Mayor. And when you write your book, don't forget to put the little footnote that Malcolm X was born in Omaha, Nebraska.
That's right.
Always advocating for my state. I first want to thank Secretary Clinton and Senator Sanders, who did not have to form this commission. It was a very contentious election, but Secretary Clinton, with a tremendous amount of grace, came to the table with Senator Sanders, and I know both Jeffs, making sure that this commission moved forward, knowing that our party had a lot of healing to do and that our party had major reforms that we had to start to tackle. And it breaks my little girl's heart every day when she sees Donald Trump on the TV. I have 3 girls, and Maya, our middle, was Hillary Clinton's biggest fan. Knowing that I was a big Bernie supporter, my husband was a big Secretary Clinton supporter, and Maya, you know, sometimes just turns the TV off because she says she can't handle the lies, or she'll, you know, rightfully say that that should be Secretary Clinton. And we all know if actually every vote mattered and counted, Secretary Clinton would be in the Oval Office, and we would not be facing the tremendous, you know, economic inequalities that continue to get worse under President Trump. But my littlest, Willa, she always said that she wished that Bernalillo would have won, right? She was the person in our family that always brings people together. And I do think that that's what this commission really does represent. It is the best of both wings of the party, really putting the party first and making sure that we're putting forward reforms that lay the groundwork for any underdog candidate or establishment candidate that comes to the table with the best ideas to lead our party, both at the state party level as well as at the national level. So thank you. And thank you to Patrice, who does not get enough thanks. And Jacob, when I was with the Young Democrats of America, I was on the staff side of things, and so I understand the work and the hours that you put in.
So everybody said their love fest. I don't like any of you, just so you know. Just kidding. This has been such, I know it's mutual. This has been truly an honor. And as Jane said, that even the formation of this did several things. It brought all of us of differing views and opinions together, but it also was an acknowledgement that something needed to be fixed. So we need to give ourselves credit for recognizing that something needed to be fixed and taking the steps to fix it. As someone who grew up in the segregated South, I learned early on that compromise and assimilation sometimes depended on whether you lived or died. And I learned early on that that was not a bad thing, because sometimes you can work from the inside out. I have not been on the DNC for 9 centuries. I just came on in 2011, so I'm relatively new. And so when I came in, I could see things that maybe people that had been there longer couldn't see, but more importantly, I learned from people that had been there longer that I didn't know. And I think both perspectives needed to be honored. I think that for those that feel that everything didn't work out the way you wanted it, and I'm one of them, I'm not going to pretend that I'm not. I think we need to recognize the fact that you cannot plant seeds and reap a harvest in the same season. So what we did now and what we've begun to do is plant seeds, and we will reap a harvest from this. But this is not the end. This is just the beginning of a dialogue. This has shown us that we can come together with differing views and differing opinions and still walk out with a consensus document that all of us feel comfortable with. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But compromise does not mean capitulation. And I don't think anyone should walk out of this room feeling like anybody capitulated in any way. What we said is, this is the beginning, give us a chance to work forward and to make it better. Now that we know we can do this, there are no barriers for always coming back together to fix whatever needs to be fixed at the DNC. We have the tools to do it. We have the relationships to do it. And I think our party's only going to be stronger. To Jen and to Larry, thank you so much for what you've done for us. Larry, in particular, thank you for talking me off the ledge that day, because I was ready to just blow it all up. And my conversation with you touched me more than I can tell you, because we did come from different perspectives, but you truly did become one of my favorite people here. And I do thank you for what you did for all of us. But most importantly, I want us to walk out of this room with a sense that we have a purpose, we have a mission, we have a message, we have a vehicle for delivering all of that. And as long as we honor the past, but not get paralyzed by the past, I think we're going to be very, very successful. Thank you all very much.
Let me thank the chairs and thank all of you. It has been my privilege to have served with you. I think by any standard or measure, this has been successful. We are a stronger and better party because we did the work we've done over the last year, by any standard. It is incumbent upon leaders to bring people together. We can allow the race-baiting, hate person that we have in the White House to divide. He is a warmonger. He is a anti-immigrant lover. He is a person who believes in dysfunction, and he believes that division wins. By any standard, we are leaders in a party that wants to bring people together, because we know that when we bring people together, we win. So leaders make a difference, and I thank you for your leadership because you have made a difference. I thank you all.
So I want to also start by thanking the chairs. I know the amount of hours that they've put into this incredible amount of work, and the staff, and particularly Patrice, who has gotten me reams and reams of documents from the DNC and done research at 11 o'clock at night. I really appreciate your support in all of this. And I also wanted to thank, he's not here today, unfortunately, but Charlie Baker, he and I were on opposite campaigns during the primary, but I worked very closely with Charlie throughout this process in the best of faith on both parts. And I think our work together has really helped in some cases to smooth over some of the rough edges in this process. So I thank Charlie very much. You know, when this process started in the aftermath of the 2016 primaries, the two campaigns came together because they both understood, Secretary Clinton understood and Senator Sanders understood, that if we were going to come together to defeat Trump and the long-term Republicans, we were going to have to create the kind of unity that everybody around this table wants to create. And the only way that was going to happen was by reforming the party in a positive way. Clearly there were divisions exposed. I don't believe they were created, but exposed during the 2016 primary in our party. There were clearly some structural issues that had to be remedied. And I think the message from the grassroots was pretty clear that people at the grassroots wanted a party which was much more reflective of people, of rank and file Democrats. And that's what this commission was all about, and that's what it continues to be about. Now, our work in many ways is done, although we will be together, I'm sure, one more time to look at the RBC's recommendations. But this is really just the first step in this reform process. It is going to the RBC, we'll be going to the DNC, and for people around the country who want reform in the party and make it stronger, who want to see the number of superdelegates radically reduced, who want to open up the primaries, who want to make the caucuses more open and transparent, who want the party to be more accountable. There's a long way to go, and the people at the grassroots are going to have to get involved and stay involved as we move through this process There's going to have to be polite and respectful communication with DNC members about where people at the grassroots stand in terms of these reforms to ensure that these reforms get through, particularly on the issue of superdelegates. We all understand that the DNC members themselves will be voting to bind themselves on the first ballot of presidential voting at the convention in the future. And for many of them, that will be a position that will be difficult or that they don't want to take. But that is what was mandated by the DNC, the convention in 2016, the highest authority in this party, unanimously adopted, supported by Secretary Clinton, supported by Bernie Sanders, that the superdelegate system be reformed. There was no provision in the mandate creating this commission that was more prescriptive than the one dealing with unpledged delegates. And this commission has remained true despite differences in personal opinion. I joined Senator Turner in favoring having no superdelegates. Despite differing opinions on this commission about where we should go, we all kept to the mandate. And it would be, I think, very bad for the party going forward in terms of creating unity if the DNC were not to substantially adopt what we have passed here at this commission. So people out in the world, be prepared. You're going to be needed to move this forward. This process is not over. You know, we've done most of the work in terms of writing this report, but there's still a long way to go. So thank you all.
Thank you. I just want to say that, you know, democracy is always an ongoing effort, and this commission, I believe, has certainly taken its responsibility well. We have a lot of provisions in the report to increase access and participation in the process, to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of our party as an institution for the American people. I think that there's a lot of credit to go around. First, I want to thank Secretary Clinton for the opportunity to serve. I want to thank all of the Sanders supporters on this commission, each one of you, for working together so well so that we could do the work before us. I want to thank the chairman of the party for his appointments, and I think they're very important, and hopefully we have delivered a product for him that will help his leadership going forward. Really, though, I think a lot of the credit for our work goes to the chair and the vice chair of this commission. It's been great working with both of you. Larry, as a Clinton appointee, I particularly want to thank you and commend you for keeping us together as a group so that we could do the work we needed to do. And we actually have a little something here for you. And
a present for Larry Cohen.
This is from all of the members of the commission. So we want to thank you for your leadership.
Enjoy. The two Jeffs come through.
Did they go shopping together?
Just wrapping.
Of course it was Patrice.
When you said Jeffs, you meant Patrice.
I was just giving you a little extra credit, you know.
Well, I'll start there. Thank you, Patrice, not just for whatever's in this box, I can only imagine, but
Please don't open it while we're all in the room.
Yeah.
Ticking.
But Patrice, and there's at least 8 or 9 of your fellow staff here, and the youngest, Jacob, who's the only one who's happy every day at his job that I've met in years. You've really been awesome. And everybody always says that in these things, but really, I mean, awesome. I'll get to you in a minute. But just want to say a few things. Lots of people still believe that with a monster president, all we should be doing is fighting Trump. Lots of people still believe that as Democrats, we should just be fighting Republicans, whether it's the House or whether it's the State House or whether it's City Hall. I'm not going to do a lot of my own history, but when I was a young activist in the union, early 20s, actually we didn't even have the union then, used to really frustrate me that I thought I was signing up, I got paid $2 an hour at that time. I thought I was signing up for, better wages or better health care or a better mission at work. I was a mental health worker. And soon I realized that, it took a while actually, it wasn't that soon, that half the work would always be inside. And that you could get all excited about that, I would say to myself at the time. But half the work would always be inside. And so, to all those who will continue to say that, not any of us 21, and not many of you, why are you working inside? We got a monster president or a horrible Congress or the worst governor ever. Because if we don't work inside, we won't be able to do the work or fight effectively, whichever word you want to use, outside. The process of working inside, about how we work together, what we stand for, how we do that work. I came to believe, like it or not, it's about half the work. So I would say in our union, where I spent, as many of you know, 39 years full-time, 10 years as president, every training I did, I would say to folks, the youngest shop steward, our union, 10 hours a week as a volunteer, they never got paid. It's the way we would define that work. 5 hours of that is going to be working inside. Don't do it if that's going to frustrate you. If you're going to get angry at the people you work with, just don't do it. Because unity doesn't fall like the rain from the sky. You got to work for it, as the song said, day and night for it. Don't worry, Yvette, I won't sing it. And I would say that to all of us. Because the only way we will be able to effectively fight Trump, the only way we'll fight Ryan and McConnell, the only way we'll fight Rickett or any of the other horrible governors is to do what I call party building. And party building means inside to do better work outside. And Jen and others here, have heard me and we've heard each other sort of grumble about the hundreds of hours this ended up being. Lots of grumbling. But I keep trying to say to myself, and I say this going forward, half the work, whatever you have to commit as a volunteer, half the work is always going to be inside. Half the work is always going to be, what does unity mean? It's not a 5-letter word. You got to work for it, day and night for it. And I would say to my sister here, the chair, who will get the last word, you've made that a pleasure. You are a model, and carry it on.
Thank you, everyone. You all have said what I had to say far better. So I just have a few things that I want to say. First, I too want to say thank you to the staff, to Jacob, to Alicia, to Julie, Lisa, Miles, Sochi, Maureen, and in particular to Patrice. I have had the true pleasure of working with Patrice, not just in this commission, but in my time at the DNC. And I know very few people that have as much grace as she does, and how she has carried that through this whole process. And for whatever we have accomplished, it is solely because Patrice has led our path forward. So thank you, Patrice. And I want to thank Helen too, in particular because Helen has come to every meeting and been part of this, and I have never had to be a chair of anything or had to go through any voting or paid attention to any voting, so I had very little clue of what I was doing, and Helen helped me not seem as bad as I was without her help. So thank you, Helen, and thank you for helping us navigate. I've said, and I've had the luxury of having remarks at the beginning of every meeting, and have at each turn thanked all of the commission. I will say when I started this process, I was
apprehensive probably does not cover how I felt about this, in part because I'm not sure I exactly knew what I was signing up for to begin with, but in part because I have seen commissions and I have seen sides come together, and I have seen people not being committed to the work in front of us. And I knew, as someone who has spent my entire life working in this party, how important our work was. And so if I was apprehensive, it was because I was concerned that we would not get to the work, to the business of what we had. And I am proud of, but I commend every single member of this commission for getting to the work. This was not about grandstanding. This was not about having a fancy title. This was certainly not about showing up to the digs that the DNC has provided. It was about doing really hard work, and every single member of this commission committed to that, to the focus on the work, and did the work. And there is not one person around this table that didn't contribute, and contribute in a real significant way and make this work better. And so for that, I am thankful. For that, I am certainly proud of what we have done. As I said, I've spent my whole life in the party. When I was 10, my dad told me if I left the Democratic Party, I'd be leaving my people. And I have kind of stayed focused on that. And so hopefully if he's watching, he feels like I've really legitimately leaned into that one. But I am, I'm proud because of the work that's done. I'm proud because of how fair this process has been. And the second thing my dad taught me was to be fair. And that's, a guiding light that I try to live by, and I think everyone here did as part of this process, and certainly Larry has led. I am really proud about how respectful and collegial this process has been, because it didn't have to be. And there were agreements and disagreements and hot moments and emotion, but through it all, everyone opened their ears, as Maya said, and listened to each other and tried to work through that, and knew that there was potentially a path forward if we kept talking. And that is something that I think shows the vibrancy and just depth of our party and the depth of all of you, which I am just so proud of. And I will leave this process respecting all of you, but having respect at a deep level of the leaders that you are, and whether or not we agree or our paths cross again in the future. I am certainly better for having worked with you, but I am confident that the path you're moving forward on will help better the party. One of the things that I've said at the start of every single meeting is that we have had just awful, awful things that we could point to that's happening in this country that is against everything that we believe in as a party and as a people. Stuff that, to be honest with you, for many, certainly for me, I'm not sure I envisioned being in 2017 and having what's happening around us happen. And so I am most proud that the work that we are doing here, that we have done in this report, will actually help unify this party and will help reform that party so that we can stay focused on the most important elements that we have in front of us. You have my commitment that I will do all that I can to fight for this report and what we have done here through any process that the RBC and the DNC has. You have my commitment that I will find ways, excuse me, to spend time in the future with Larry Cohen because the first meeting that we had together, he sat me in this big room because he wanted to get to know me and see if I was like legit, and he was way up close in my business, asking me all sorts of questions, and I was like, who is this guy? And then after taking a deep breath and having the opportunity to work together, I honestly have not met a more passionate or driven person. While we come from, as we say, different sides, and we came from different places, there's almost no place that Larry and I didn't agree. And I think that if this process was fair, and if we were focused, and if we were staying true to our North Star, is because Larry helped guide us there through every turn. So thank you, Larry. And I hope that while the next time we get together, we won't have microphones. Not that you need one. We can still hang out. All right, so the last thing that I want to say is just to focus us, and some of you have said this as well, we have to win in order for us to be able to do the work that we've voted on. We have to make sure that we are staying in a place where people want to be part of this party, that they see the good, that they see all of you and the grassroots and the activists, and that they see the doors open and a voice for them. We will not stop anything. We will not unify anything, and we will not reform anything that truly matters if we cannot win elections. And right now, for our parting thoughts, for my focus for the future and making sure that every day I find a way to do this, this is no longer just about a strong party. It is truly about saving our country. And I think all of you have had a role in helping strengthen our party in order to save our country. And I know all of you here, and certainly the folks that have been with us, will go out there and continue to find ways to do that. And for that, I will be forever grateful and thankful. With that, I do not believe we have any additional business, so I'd like to take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all in favor? We are adjourned.
Sure. Good to meet you. Okay,
Commission members, there's food next door, I forgot to mention it, lunch next door for commission members. Yeah, and if you could stop by, that'd be great, lunch next door.
I would like to, understand the color, I really like everything.